Brothers and sisters, good evening. How are you today? Fine. Cold? Cold. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. If I ask you, what is your biggest fear in life? What's your answer will be? What's your biggest fear, or you're afraid of something?
Not pleasing the Lord.
Not pleasing the Lord. What else?
Snakes.
Snakes. Okay, well, snakes. All right. What else?
Losing my children.
Losing children. One more. One more. Losing your parents. That's my biggest fear too. Fear is part of life and part of each our own daily lives. We are afraid of many things. Failures, death, violence, the rise of terrorism, religious intolerance, and so on and so on. A lot of things. Brothers and sisters, growing up in a barn, I noticed there is a cycle of fear in my family. You know, in the barn, you can find a lot of cockroach. Cockroach is afraid of mice. And mice is afraid of cat. A cat is afraid of dog. And dog is afraid of my dad. My dad is afraid of my mom. And my mom is afraid of cockroach. One day we were feeding the cows and there was a big cockroach flying zzz, and all of a sudden, if it stopped and perched on my mom's head. And she was like, okay, what was that? Okay, hold on, don't move. And she screamed. And she's like, why are there so many of them in our house? And I was like, no, Mom, we are in their house, in the barn. And she screamed. My brothers and sisters, we are afraid of so many things in life, from the small things to big things. Today, the angel told the shepherds, do not be afraid. It is unique that the first words the angel said were, do not be afraid. One of the reasons why people lived in fear is that people have heard so much bad news in their lives. But for our ancestors, bad news was very important to hear. Bad news was very important to hear because in order to anticipate, in order to prepare, in order to survive, they need to hear the negative news surrounding them. The storms, the predators, the enemies, or anything that could have been life-threatening. My brothers and sisters, if your husband is going out, your husband or your wife going out driving your car, when he gets home, he says, oh, I have good news and bad news for you. Which one do you want to hear first? Which one do you want to hear first? The good news first. Okay, tell me the good news. Okay, then he said, the good news is that your airbag worked perfectly. Well, that's no good news. Brothers and sisters, today the angel brought the good news for the shepherds. And the good news is a Savior has been born for you, who is Christ and Lord. The good news wasn't brought to the temple. The good news wasn't brought to the kings. The good news wasn't brought to the religious leaders in Bethlehem or the mayor in Bethlehem. Instead, it was brought to the lowly shepherds in the fields. And then the angel continued, "You will find an infant wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in the manger." My brothers and sisters, the reason why Mary gave birth in the manger is because there was no room for them in the inn. However, at that time, there were no sheep in the manger because the sheep were with their shepherds out in the field. Yet, it was nighttime. Well, this is kind of strange. Why? They should be in the manger because this is at night. Whether it was intentionally or unintentionally, the shepherd emptied their barns, and they went out to the field, and the barn became the place for Mary to give birth to Jesus. While the people in town of Bethlehem crowded the place so tightly, there was no room for Joseph and Mary, and the shepherd emptied the place for the birth of Jesus. My brothers and sisters, however, the choice to be born in a manger was not just because there was no room in the inn. Rather, it was as if Jesus wanted to be born in the part of the house that was never shown guests, the dirty stable. It was as if God is not interested in a formal welcome. He is not interested in superficial relationships. It was as if He comes to enter the slums of our souls, and He comes in the attitude of souls that we are ashamed of. My brothers and sisters, we can find Jesus if we make an empty space in our hearts. We are often looking for the Lord, calling the Lord to save us, to be present among us. But sometimes there is no more room in our hearts. We have already filled ourselves with our own agenda, our interests, our worries, and our fears. Jesus needs an empty room in our hearts to be born. My brothers and sisters, a Savior has been born for you, who is Christ and Lord. This is the Christmas truth, and this is the good news for all of us. This is the only thing that needs to be said or even can be said. This is the news which has been waiting for centuries. This is the greatest news ever. Tonight, we will live here knowing the good news that the darkness is changed with the light of life, that the violence is filled with the gentlest one, that the conflicts hold the Prince of Peace, that the sin is filled with the merciful one, and that the hunger is filled with the bread of life. My brothers and sisters, Christmas begins with God's heart, and it can only complete when it reaches our hearts. So let us allow Jesus to be born in our hearts and lives every day so that we may share the good news of the selfless love, the compassionate words, and the unconditional forgiveness to others. God bless you and Merry Christmas.